Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Google executives and a famous filmmaker are among those bankrolling a venture to survey and eventually mine metals and minerals from asteroids that orbit near Earth. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer tells us more about this wild idea. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Shannon.
Mining metals from asteroids. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, and particularly they're talking about platinum, which is a blow to South Africans, because we feel as though we've got the platinum preserve. It's our domain. We hold on to it tightly. And, during this conference, that was the metal that they referred to all the time. And in fact, they spoke of it as being a very fruitful metal because the price is at $1,500 an ounce at the moment. But will the price remain at $1,500 an ounce if they say there's such an abundance of platinum in the heavens? So it is a bit of a stress factor for South Africa. And perhaps, if they don't succeed, it might be better for us. But they are looking at making sure that they try and turn the heavens into an economy. They try and turn outer space into economy, which is something that they're not just talking about, because these are all space flight pioneers. Eric Anderson takes people into space, and his partner is also very much involved. And we've even got funders. So, we see Google's CEO, Larry Page, putting his money where his mouth is and really helping to fund this. And there's also the filmmaker, James Cameron, who's come around. So they don't seem to be underfunded. I don't think they'll be hugely demanding initially on funds. And they're talking about prospecting, because science fiction writers have seen these asteroids as low-hanging fruit. They've written about them for decades. They want to turn that science fiction into science fact. These near-Earth orbits, they feel that they can access the smaller asteroids and then not use humans to mine these, but use robots. Now, I'm thinking that even if they fail, and maybe as a South African I'm thinking, well, let's hope you fail, there would be this aspect of technology developed. If they can create robots that can actually mine or almost do that, it would be fantastic for South Africa's deep-level mines, where people shouldn't venture any longer. They're just getting too hot and hostile. So I'm sure there could be some technology coming out of this that'll be useful. But when you listen to Eric Anderson speak, he wants to turn this to account. And he sees water on these asteroids as the first point where he can separate the hydrogen and the oxygen and then create rocket fuel, which they will need for their various craft. The first thing he wants to do is prospect like any good miner. So he wants to send up 5 telescopes, and he's given himself, I think, 24 months. That's what drew the applause, because there weren't many timelines that they gave away with this, and nor how much funding they had. They didn't give that away, but they did give a determination to succeed, and they did concede that there could be failure. But I think even the pictures that will come back to Earth from these telescopes are going to be very valuable. They send 5 telescopes up, and these are examining asteroids. A lot of people are going to want that material. So just from a point of view of selling a service, and then also maybe selling telescopes, sending telescopes up. They're talking about a production line of telescopes. So I think they're looking at quite a few of them.
Now, Planetary Resources is the company that wants to do all the surveying and stuff. They haven't given any specific dates, but I can imagine it's going to take a while to get this actually off the ground.
I think NASA for at least 20 years, that's the National Space and Aeronautics Authority in the United States, they've been talking about mining equipment, making equipment that could actually mine Mars and, Moon and things like that. So there's been a lot of thought given to this. When they said in 24 months we will have these telescopes up there, that was quite a commitment, I thought. A lot of commentators were saying, no, this is the easy part. When you go into the phase of actually mining, that's another story, because there are not going to be people up there. There are going to be robots up there, that will mine for long periods of time on their own, and then the payload will be collected in certain orbital situations that are favorable. So it's hard to imagine that they can do this. It seems like they've gone off their rocker, never mind got into their rockets. But when you listen to them, they're very convincing. And the people around them believe in them. Eric Anderson seems to have a belief factor, particularly from people like Ross Perot Jr., who is the son of a former presidential candidate there. He said, look, in this case, I'm not backing the horse, I'm backing the jockey. So they believe in the people.
Now, the company says that not all emissions will come back with precious metals or minerals. What else could they focus on?
Yeah, I think they're looking at creating a sort of a space economy. That's their great ambition. They have been booking people on flights. And we saw even in Johannesburg, Virgin Galactica was here yesterday. If you had $200,000 to spare or 1.5 million rand, they would be prepared to take you up into space. So people are definitely looking at this in a far more realistic way. That's happening. I mean, we know that Mark Shuttleworth, he's a man from Cape Town, and he paid $20 million, I think, to get himself into space as the first African into space. People are now moving into space, so it is a reality. The flights are going up, human space flights are taking place, and they want to turn space now into an economy. And looking at these asteroids, I suppose, and finding that there are precious metals, and the one that they mention all the time, platinum group metals, they see a longer-term future there. The fact that they feel they can create a lot of filling stations. They'll take the water off these asteroids. There seems to definitely be water on the asteroids. Get the hydrogen and oxygen from there, create that rocket fuel, and then you can virtually, if one of your craft are coming up there, you can fill up from their filling stations, as it were, and then go further into space. So it's like a dream world. We can't believe it now, but we know that people have gone into the oceans. And Peter Diamandis, the co-founder and chairman with Eric Anderson, and he's saying, look, it's harder to go into the ocean there. I mean, what Shell has done with robotics in the oceans, he feels is harder than what they're planning to do. Their biggest point is that they want to make this cheaper. You see, it's too expensive to go up there. They want to cut the costs dramatically. And they're not saying, well, we haven't got the technology to be up there. No, we've got the technology, but we want to cut the cost. Now, a lot of people are saying that, to really capitalize this from a mining point of view, you'd need a lot of funding. They're not telling us too much about the funding at the moment, because I think that small teams are going to move sort of with quite a lot of acceleration. It's a private sector initiative. This is no state funding here. Normally when there's risk like this, the state have got to come in. I suppose NASA in the US has done quite a lot of spade work. Kennedy made sure we got to the moon, and other people have followed. And now the private sector sees they can build on that and turn it into a commercial activity, which is fascinating because they must see some profits. I mean, they definitely see profits in the mining side of it. Whether they're going to get that right, we'll only know in 10 years or so, I presume. But the very thought of it in a 10-year term is also frightening for South Africans, because that's short period in mining. Very short. And if they have to start interfering with the platinum market, even if it's 20 years or 30 years, it's not a very comfortable scenario, because we're in a comfort zone here. We've got all the platinum. It's very important to us. But perhaps by opening up this whole platinum market, instead of platinum being used so sparingly because it's so expensive, maybe it'll be used across a broader front and then create a bigger market. Who knows?
Now, obviously, prices are going to be out of this world. How much do you think it could cost to actually start mining that? I saw prices of like 2.5 billion. Yeah,
2.5 billion to retrieve an asteroid and bring it back to Earth. $2.5 billion we're talking about. And then I think the economists said, well, if you're going to really capitalize this, you're going to need something like $100 billion. Perhaps that's why they're not talking funding at the moment, because I'm sure all their funders would back off if that was the idea, unless they knew of their returns, which, there's high risk, but probably high reward if they can get it right. Their whole mantra is, now we're going to dramatically bring down these costs. So that's going to be interesting to see. And the chief engineer that they've got there has had wide experience in creating the rover for Mars and various equipment that goes into space. So they have handpicked people, and they said to the world, we are announcing this publicly because we hire it. We're going to hire the world's best engineers, but we want a small team of the brightest. They're not looking for a government type of NASA type of thing where you've got hordes of people. Very small teams making very big leaps quickly. So it's going to be interesting to watch them. They were certainly convincing. They're certainly convincing when you listen to them. But talk is cheap, and they're saying talk is cheap. We don't want to talk anymore. We want to do, and hold us to account. Well, I think the world will.
Well, it sounds very exciting. It sounds truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, it's surreal.
Very. Thank you very much, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Shannon.
That's the show for today. Join us again next time for more news and insight into what's happening in the mining world.